the Yoruba youth are saying that no, we throw our weight against the implementation of Sharia because it will create unrest and intolerance within the Yoruba people. And this is not a welcomed idea because it is aliened from their own culture and tradition. And this will not in any way be condoned by anyone forcing the enforcement of Sharia on the Yoruba people and their culture. Their culture must be preserved at all costs, and they must defend the Yoruba interests and heritage. Now, the same people pushing this Islamization agenda through the expansion of Sharia down to the west, down to the south, most importantly now, the southwestern region, are the same people the Sultan-led group, the National Supreme Council of Islamic Affairs, in 2016 opposed the bill seeking for the creation of Christian courts within Nigeria. They opposed it, tagging that move as a respite for anarchy, a respite for anarchy, or a recipe for anarchy. What does that mean? They are saying that the Christian association, the Christian communities within Nigeria has no any right protected by the law for them to seek for a bill, to sponsor a bill for their own protection, just as the Sharia is a religious-based court or law sponsored by the Islamic Caliphate. Now, if they can oppose the implementation, the sponsor of the bill at the National Assembly, tagging it that it will lead to breakdown of law and anarchy, according to them. Now, imposing Sharia in the entire Western region, they do not consider it as an infringement on the rights of the Christians, who also are predominantly within the Christian or the Yoruba community or the southwestern region. How do you consider this? If the National Supreme Council of Islamic Affairs will consider the enactment of Christian or establishment of Christian courts as a recipe for anarchy, why do they still toe the same line? Why do they consider that the implementation of Sharia, establishment of Sharia courts, and independent arbitration panel to oversee the operations of Sharia within the Southwest, why do they consider it as something that could be acceptable by other religion affiliations within the Nigerian state? He that comes to equity must come with a clean hand. If you consider that, of course, by simple majority, the Southerners are majorly Christians. When you take the population of the southern region of this country, they are up to 80% Christian, if not more. When you consider the south-south, the southeast, and even some parts of the north central, the middle belt are Christians. So how do they arrive in this expansion, forcing it on other beliefs, other belief systems who do not agree or align with Islamic tenets of faith? If they consider the Christian courts, the bill to sponsor the Christian court or establish the Christian court that will address matters bordering on Christian tenets of faith as a recipe for anarchy. The same way, by implication, the expansion of Sharia down to the south must be considered as a recipe for anarchy. This is not a surprise that the Yoruba youths are now coming to say, we can't take this anymore. I think we have been observing for a while, seeing the up and downs, the arguments and whatever. The future belongs to us. We have seen the way Sharia has affected the 12 northern states. Today, they are the most vulnerable, they are the most volatile regions of the north. Just like some F0R that observed the first Sharia implementation, the state that adopted Sharia in the first instance, they don't have peace. The people are being dislodged and displaced. What they consider the living standard of the people is nothing to write home about. Now, how do we implement Sharia? How will the Sultan or the Caliphate, Fulani Caliphate, impose the implementation of Sharia, which have promoted intolerance, religious intolerance, especially in the northern part of the country? Here in the southwestern region, we have the culture of tolerance, regardless of your religious affiliations or profession. Everybody's right to freedom of worship and expression is respected. But with the advent of Sharia, the northern Islamic faithfuls will be radicalized. Will be radicalized to the point that intolerance will be the order of the day. Just as what is happening in Osun State, the Sheshe worshippers, traditional worshippers, were allegedly stoned by suspected Islamic radicals or fundamentalists. This is quite condemnable. And with all this and many other points or evidence that abounds, bordering or surrounding the Sharia and Islamic expansions and movements, the Yoruba youth have come to say no to the implementation of Sharia, regardless of the fact that some Yoruba Obas or traditional monarchs have believed that Sharia is the way to go. No going back to the implementation of Sharia. But the youth are coming up to say no, we don't want anything that will escalate already worsened situation. You can see of most recent about 110 persons suspected terrorists were nabbed in Osun State, where they are being trained on how to manufacture explosive. You heard that is in the public domain. So they believe that with the advent of Sharia, it will increase the radicalization and eventually become a breeding ground for terrorism to strive in the southwestern region, just as we are seeing it in other parts of the north where Sharia is predominant. And again, it will also empower the establishment of Sharia police that can arrest people arbitrarily, contrary to the provisions of the Nigerian Constitution, which recognizes that Nigeria is a secular country that is not defined by religion, that they have ethnic nationalities, majority which happens to be the Hausa, Yoruba, and the Igbos. So with the establishment of law enforcement or Sharia enforcement agency as the ISPA, the rights of freedom of expression, of movement of the people of the southwestern region will be brought to check. In fact, will be usurped entirely, because imagine a situation where a Christian will be arrested by a Hispa police and be tried based on the principles or the code of Sharia laws, which is not binding on him. Now, if the Sharia is established, what is saying that everybody within the jurisdiction could be subjected to the tenets of faith of Islam, regardless of what you profess as your religion. This is an aberration and must be vehemently resisted, according to the Yoruba youths. They having these considerations that it will jeopardize the freedom and liberty of the Yoruba people and erode their cultural heritage and posterity, preservation of their own posterity, because a time will come when supremacy there will be a power tussle or supremacy between the Yoruba tradition or custom to that of Islam or Sharia based arguments. And with all these things, you saw what happened, how they played out within the northern part. You see, using the willing tools from the Hausa extraction to buy the idea of radicalization, they went and fought against their own monarchical system or traditional rulership that is known to be Sarikis. The Hausas are governed or ruled by Sarikis, Sariki Hausawa. But today, that monarchical system has been swallowed up, if not totally defeated. Even within the Hausa communities, you see the Emirates councils ruling in the hem of affairs, enthroned in the place of the Sarikis. So how did they start? They used the instrumentality of religion, pushing religion as a veritable tool in advancing the cause of exclusive dominance. And the Yoruba youth, who are, of course, majority are learned and informed, are saying, we stand with the Gani Adams, the Kakafo of the Yoruba nation or the Yoruba race, that we don't want Sharia because we have seen the damage, the negative effect and impact on the Hausas and other communities where it's been practiced in the north. With all this foregoing, and being that the same Sultan-led group opposed the bill seeking for the enactment or the adoption, implementation, establishment of the Christian court, if they can impose it and the Christians respected that in the interest of justice and peace, the same way they should restrain from the southwest, as the youth of the southwest are now demanding that Sharia should be abolished in the interest of peace and justice, so that everybody or the party involved within the eastern, southwestern region will have peace. This is, according to them, in the interest of peace and nothing more than this. So all the political and whatever advances that is being projected or sponsored, they should consider in the interest of peace. So if you are saying that it is a do or die affair, no going back, then it means that the Christians communities would also rise to revisit the bill for the Christian courts to be established. Yes, because you consider it as a recipe for anarchy. Now, if you are now leading the cause that will degenerate to anarchy, well, you are being just mischievous and nothing less of that. That will, of course, be a recipe for anarchy and crisis. Just as the tension is building up, there is a very strong contention, discrepancy, argument surrounding the implementation of Sharia. The Yorubas consider it as a threat to their cultural heritage, and that will not be accepted by them. Well, that is just the case as under review, pending on whatever happens in the latest or in the near future. We continue to review that and how it will go down. Some have argued that let the North control their Sharia, establish their own ISPA. This is empowered by the Nigerian law, according to the Supreme Leader of the National Sovereign Council of Islamic Affairs, the Sultan of Sokoto. He said that the Sharia law is protected under Nigerian, recognized under Nigerian court. If that is true, then the Christian communities has a duty and obligation to make sure that their own religion and their right to religious affiliations and liberty must be protected by the same Nigerian constitution. Otherwise, the Islamization agenda will sweep their interests and every other interest or religious beliefs within the system. So the right thing must be done according to the Yoruba youths. Well, how far they could push this is just will be defined in a matter of time. What is your own take regarding this development? Because it's not something that should be dismissed. Some persons are saying, just leave it, they are making noise. It is not about making noise, it is not about mere saying. These people are advancing the cause, and they are well strategic in their pursuit or quest for enforcing this. So they have set their machineries in place and targeting when it is ready for them to strike. And they believe, under the watch of Ahmed Bola Tinubu, who is a Muslim president, they could push or subject him to such conditions that will leave him with no other option than to surrender to them, so that the North can capture the West. And when that happens, decisions bordering on politics, economic, and culture will be defined based on the directives or instructions coming from the caliphate, the Fulani Caliphate, or the Sultan of Sokoto. But this will not augur well with the Yorubas. Just as one imam, chief imam within the Southwest, argued that the chief imam in the Southwest is more superior than the Oni of Ife. Who happens to be the custodian of the Yoruba culture and heritage. Now, if that is the argument they are pushing, that the chief imam in the Southwest is bigger, is greater in terms of influence, in terms of recognition, than a whole custodian of Yoruba culture and tradition, then it means the youths of the Yoruba coalition have a justifiable reason not to allow that to happen in their own environment, in their own region, because it's an insult, it's an aberration for you to say that a traditional ruler, a custodian of the people's rights, heritage, custodian of the culture of the people, should be relegated in the name of religion. What an irony. What an affront. Well, it depends on the Yoruba to rise and to this occasion and challenge that. The Oni of Ife, you can imagine if the chief imam could be considered as superior by their own assessment and projections. This means already the Sultan of Sokoto should be lording over all the Obas. In fact, the entire Yoruba dynasty and culture, heritage and prosperity should be subjected to the leadership of the caliphate. But this, I believe, will not be allowed to take place. I know the Yorubas will not allow anything that would dent or disparage their cultural heritage and affinity or custom, as the case is. Well, let's get to know your own take regarding this development. It's an exciting moment, but then it is not something everyone must wish, because it is building up resentment, building up tensions, and that could, if not well managed, be a recipe for anarchy and breakdown of law and order. So let's get to know your own take regarding this update and development via the comment section. Thank you for watching.